I'm Mixer Giant and I'm going to be celebrating Warner Bros. 100th anniversary. I'm going to be saying how they can do the new live-action Powerpuff Girls show and the new cartoon Powerpuff Girls show that they announced. Did say he's going to do serialized storytelling and do season-long arcs in it. So I'm also going to be saying how they can do that and how they can be doing some new villains in it. And for how you would do both shows, you should have it set in the future of the Powerpuff Girls show during the flashback episode in the city of Clitsville, with them being teenagers, and with them needing to get used to their powers again because of there not being any supervillains for a while, and because of them having a different set of emotions as teenagers. And the Powerpuff Girls would be dating the Rowdy Rough Boys in the future as teenagers. Because we already saw in the Powerpuff Girl flashback episode in the city of Clipsville that the Rowdy Rough Boys aren't villains anymore because of the girls falling in love with them. And you can still make it in the Rowdy Rough Boys character to do it because of them just not caring about it anymore. And with them still being fun-loving and still them just wanting to have fun, but with them having a much more chill and relaxed personality as teenagers. The Gang Green Gang would be actual gangsters because of it being a grown-up version of being street toughs, and each one would be a spoof on a different kind of gangster. Big Billy would be their bodyguard, Grubber, Snake, and Little Arturo would be Goodfellas, and Ace would be the Godfather, because of him already having an Italian-American accent and him already having the mustache. They'd be one of the reasons why there's so much crime in Townsville and them being in charge of all the street-level crime in Townsville. And because the original Powerpuff Girls show did a spoof on the Beatles with the Beatles, a team-up of the Powerpuff Girls' most iconic supervillains, and because of the members of the Beatles that were still alive got back together during the coronavirus, it would be a good idea for the Powerpuff Girls Beatles to get back together, by it being him's idea. And because of the other supervillains being scared of him, they would team up with him, while some would try to do it to destroy Townsville and to get revenge on the Powerpuff Girls. For the villains that are part of the original Beatles team, they would do it because of them missing being the Beatles together. Then they would defeat the Powerpuff Girls and capture them so they can destroy them. But then the professor would use stuff from the lab to help him save them, and so the Powerpuff Girls would get free and defeat the villains. They tried to get the Ronnie Rough Boys to join them to defeat the Powerpuff Girls, but they would just say no to it because of them dating the Powerpuff Girls as teenagers. And with Mojo Jojo, you would do him exactly the same, just him having some white hair and some of his hair turning gray. And Mojo Jojo would get together with him, which by the way stands for His Infernal Majesty, who was a girl and the devil in the original series, and with them being like parents to the Rowdy Rough Boys. And also Miss Bellum would be the mayor in this show, instead of the original mayor, because of us all being sick and tired of the joke of politicians being bad at their jobs. And you'd still have the original man there just as a fun uncle mentor to the girls. Then for the new villains you would do in the show, you would need to do an ice cream man who's a friend of the girls because he gives them ice cream at their street. But then the professor accidentally spilling a drop of chemical X at the ice cream factory that accidentally got in his lab coat when he was doing an experiment in the lab. And him only going to the ice cream factory to surprise the girls with it, and to get some ice cream that tastes better than usual. And them letting him do it because of him fixing some of the machines they use to make ice cream, and him upgrading them with technology. And because of him being the Powerpuff Girls, the superheroes of the city's Baba. But then there would be an accident at that ice cream man who's a friend of the girls' ice cream truck, and it would spill the Chemical X ice cream onto him, and he would become an ice cream monster and fight against the girls. Because of him becoming an ice cream monster from the Chemical X ice cream, affecting his mind, and because then he would think that this is just his way of wanting to give the world ice cream. And him also hating being an ice cream monster would just push him over the edge and make him go completely crazy about it. The girls would fight against him for a while in the show, But then the professor would use antidote X in his experiments to cure him of being a monster made out of ice cream. Then you would also do that famous singer that the professor has liked for a while now because of him being a big fan of hers, and who he was trying to get the autograph of and to go on a date with her, started eating the Chemical X ice cream at one of her autograph signings at premiere of a award show. And then her starting to eat a lot of it afterwards, her starting to have an unhealthy obsession with it afterwards, and her skin becoming green and hideous because of the Chemical X ice cream and her career being ruined because of it. She would start to try to get revenge on the professor for a while in the show, and with her starting to look like a witch and with her blaming the professor for it. But then she would start to forgive him in the end. And you would also need to reboot Subna, so you can get something out of the Powerpuff Girls reboot, so it wouldn't be a complete waste, and you getting something good out of it. But you would need to reboot it because since she's from the Powerpuff Girls reboot, she was terrible. And you would need to make it good so she would fit in more with the idea original Powerpuff Girls. Besides, it would be good for the professor to have a good permanent love interest in the show, and him having someone to relate to and for him to have someone to do science things with. It would be nice if Powerpuff Girls having someone to defend their side of the argument against the professor. And there was a lot of fan art of Subna online of how she would look in the original show, and a lot of people redesigned the personality of this character online for how she would be in the original show. So it's obvious the fans really wanting this, and you need to do this for the fans. Not just to give the fans what they want, which by the way is the whole point of you doing shows for the fans. You also doing this as a big fan I'm sorry for how terrible the reboot was. And we did already see in the Some Things Amiss this episode that the professor is lonely. So this would be good because of her being able to do science with him. And after the Some Things Amiss this episode, the professor deserves to have a girlfriend and the girls deserve to have an actual mother figure. With her being different from Keen and Bellum, in the way of her doing fun things with the girls. Supna already has a condition that turns it into a half-woman, half-spider, half-scorpion monster. Lee is just going to explain how she could have gotten it and making her a better character for this version of the show. And also going to be making it that she has a better relationship with the Powerpuff Girls and her having a more interesting relationship with the Professor. For it to make as much sense as possible and for it to be interesting the audience seeing it. And so me making her into an actually good character with a more interesting personality, not like how the terrible reboot did her. And because an extreme condition can lead to an extreme personality. And part of the fun of these characters and the reason why these characters are so good is you find out that they're much more than they seem to be. And there being a good reason of why them being like that. And I would combine both versions of Sumnut from the Familiar Faces video about her. Familiar Faces is the name of a YouTube channel and he's a really good YouTuber about other forms of media. I'll leave a link to his YouTube channel and the video in the description below. And the YouTube channel of another good YouTuber, Ink Tank, that has a YouTube channel completely devoted to Ben 10. And the YouTubers Curl the Artist and ORS comic book series Ben 10 5 years later. So you can see that an older version of an original cartoon superhero from Cartoon Network can work. Then the professor would fall in love with her because of her being so good at science, and because of the girls getting along with her at first, and because of the professor being lonely, and because of him being able to do science things with her. But Sumner wouldn't like him at first, and she would be very cold towards him at first. With you making Sumner an ice cream metaphorically, and with her being very cold and distant, but with her also being shy, nervous, and messy, because of her being embittered that she can't fall in love, and she keeps everyone at a distance because it's her way of staying in control. And it's not that she doesn't take care of herself, she just has more important things to do. because of her trying to find a cure for her condition. For the way she looks, she'd be the same height of your usual person, with her slouching and having a large backside. Her wearing a turtleneck sweater and a lab coat. She would have these big lab gloves like the ones Dexter's mommy wore in Dexter's laboratory, but then you'd also see her put one of them in her lab coat, so it would look like her having some extra limbs. With her having her hair tied up in a bundle, but with her having some big loose hairs there, so it looks like a spider. She would also have a tie and glasses in the shape of a black widow hourglass, and there would be a crack in the corner of her black widow hourglass glasses, so it would look like a spider web. With her having a big square head and a small triangle chin, she would be hanging out with the professor for a science conference because of her working on an experiment that would help mankind for a big good guy science company, which she only worked together with because of them being able to spread it throughout the world. And she also tried to do a cure for herself, and her also trying to test it out with the professor. And the Powerpuff Girls would start out liking her at first. Then the professor would invite her to a movie night as a way to try to go on a date with her, and as a family thing for the Powerpuff Girls. It would go good at first, but then they would freak out over her pet spider. Then she would get angry about it because of her relating to the other monsters that usually try to destroy the town they live in, because maybe they can't help being different, like her with her condition, so she would be sympathetic to them. Then she would go because of it, giving the Powerpuff Girls a good reason not to like her and to think something's up with her. Then the girls would confront her about it, but then she would also warm up to the professor, and then she would get to know him a little too well, and then her turning into a giant monster spider. Then after them finding out about it, she would tell them that she was in a lab accident, because she was trying to find a cure for more kinds of poisons, by her getting the DNA and immune system from poisonous animals, and with her getting a sample of a rare extinct flower that had an unusual effect on people's emotions. And someone else from the Good Guy Science Company was working on something else right across from her, about them trying to activate technology with your emotions. Then their experiments got mixed up with each other, there being an explosion, and whenever someone feels love now, she turns into a half-woman, half-spider, scorpion monster. And you need to make it that when she does turn into a monster, her having the body of a woman but with a scorpion body at the bottom, at the human woman part of her body, she would have scorpion arms and claws, and she would have a scorpion tail at the scorpion part of her body that shoots out acid and revs in it having poison in it. And the end of her tail is sharp enough to cut through anything. The Powerpuff Girls would stop her from destroying the city. Then she would stay with them to try to find a cure for herself. Then her and the professor would actually start dating because of him being able to help with the cure for herself. Because of the professor caring about it is what snapped her out of being a monster, and with them also curing her in the end. Then you would also need to do a Lego too, for the same reboot reasons. With him being in his cloud kingdom one day and him flying over Townsville, and because of him seeing how miserable the people of Townsville are after the Powerpuff Girls fighting a giant monster that tried to destroy their town again, he would go to their town and blast happiness into their eyes, and it's spreading like a disease, and you would need to do it as an homage to Body Snatchers. Then you would do the people of Townsville destroying the city because of them not seeing how bad it is, because of them not having the emotion to see how bad it is, because of them only having the emotion happy, so them only being able to do happy things. And the Powerpuff Girls wouldn't be affected by it because of them being in another part of the world fighting against the same giant monster they fought against earlier. Then Allegro would be immune to his own happiness because of him being the one to do it to everyone else, so he never got his eyes blasted with happiness. Then the Powerpuff Girls would try to stop him because the people of Townsville may be happy, but they're not being good. If there being a difference between people being happy and people being good, and because of it being different, them being happy all naturally and someone just making them happy. And because they don't want fake happiness, they want real happiness. Then Allegro would secretly send Chamomile to the professor with a powerful sleeping agent in it so he can use him as a hostage against the Powerpuff Girls. Then they would find out that the Cloud Kingdom is what's keeping them like that, so then they would destroy it, which would make it that people have other emotions than just happiness again. And the last scene of the episode would be him combining with the giant monster the girls were fighting earlier. Then for the next episode he would appear in, you would do there being a rain cloud that makes everyone else in Townsville sad, and with the people suffering because of it, and with them actually giving up on life because of it. Then there would be a sad bear called Largo from there, and it turning out that him not being able to control it just happening wherever he goes. Then Allegro combined with the giant monster would fight against them. Then we would find out Allegro and Largo's origin story. That they are two parts of the same personality divided into two, from another dimension with cosmic animals acting like humans. Then because of this, Cosmic Bear's friends and neighbors trying to do a portal to another dimension as an experiment to try to travel the multiverse. Something would go wrong with it and it would end up in the Powerpuff Girls dimension, and the Cosmic Bear would got split in two. Largo, the sad part of him, and Allegro, the happy and angry part of him. Because Allegro only has the happy and angry parts of him not seeing anything wrong with the terrible things that he does, and with him not being able to see it from the other guy's point of view. But because Largo is only sadness, him feeling sympathetic towards the other guys, and him feeling bad that Largo does terrible things to them. Then after the Powerpuff Girls would defeat Largo would combine with the giant monster, Largo would recombine with Allegro and they would become the same Cosmic Bear again. Then he would teleport himself and his friends and neighbors back to their own dimension. And for the different things you would do with the original Powerpuff Girls villains, then because of Largo not being there anymore, it would get rid of the rain cloud, which will let the people of Townsville feel happy emotions again, so they would decide not to give up on life and them celebrating it. Then for what you would do with the original supervillains, you would need to do the Smiths being an actual supervillain family now, and with them working together with the other Powerpuff Girls villains. And you would also do in the future Medusa seducing someone powerful for her to be a threat to the girls, and more different and a unique way than the original show, and more bugs would have taken over her family's company by now. You'd also get to see Fuzzy Lumpkins hanging out with his family and being a supervillain for the usual Fuzzy Lumpkin reasons, with him being more intelligent of how him working together with the other Powerpuff Girls villains, and you fully establishing in this show that the Lumpkins are the missing link between man and bear, because the professor already tried to do research to find out what Fuzzy Lumpkins is, and they did already do a whole episode trying to figure out what Fuzzy Lumpkins is. And they do say Bigfoot is the missing link between man and ape, so this way you would get all three of the theories the professor originally had about what a lumpkin is. And it would be good because the definitive answer would be based on the original show's logic. And with him actually dating a girl version of the species, and with him actually getting married to her, and you can just make it that he just thinks it's the same wife from the original episode with the date, Manure he married. And you also need to do his nephews being friends with the Powerpuff Girls and the Rowdy Rough Boys. Then for the Amoeba Boys, you need to do them actually being good villains in this show, and you also showing their origin in this show. with them being a part of an experiment done by a scientist, where he injected some new experimental radiated DNA into some amoeba and it grew into the amoeba boys. And also need to do the amoeba boys actually having powers in the cell, like them being able to suit shift and them being able to clone themselves and them being able to turn into a giant monster because of them being giant molecules. And for how you do an animated movie trilogy, or at least just a bunch of special extended episodes, is Mojo Jojo would try to send them to a mirror dimension, but instead they would get out evil versions of themselves from the mirror dimension. The Powerpunk Girls. The Rounding Rough Boys would get confused about which ones are which, but they would ultimately know which Powerpuff Girl is which. The Powerpunk Girls would try to get them to fall in love with them, but the Powerpuff Girls would stop them from doing it. The Powerpunk Girls could take the Roundy Rough Boys' place in the Powerpuff Girls Rose Gallery as the evil clone villains to the original superheroes in the Powerpuff Girls Rose Gallery. And you'd also need to do it as a way to honor the IDW Cartoon Network comic books about the Powerpuff Girls. Then the Rowdy Rough Boys would get angry at the Powerpuff Girls for falling in love with another rock and roll band. Then they would have a friendly battle of the bands with each other, the Rowdy Rough Boys and the Powerpuff Girls. Then the Boogeyman would try to get rid of the other band, and then the Powerpuff Girls and Rowdy Rough Boys would try to stop him. And at the end credit scene, you sang up the future movies, with them crossing over Dexter's Laboratory, which is also created from Craig McCracken, the creator of the Powerpuff Girls. Then you would also use this to hint at the multiverse at the end, with you being able to hint at the multiverse of Cartoon Network shows here with this. Then in the next movie, you would do Super Smash Up, and because of you revealing the multiverse in this movie, it also setting up another future movie, and then credit scene of this movie. To explain and why Dexter was there because of the multiverse, and then them crossing over with the other Cartoon Network shows, where all the Cartoon Network heroes go up against all the Cartoon Network villains, and them also being able to use the version of Ben 10 from the new Ben 10 cartoon show. Then in the last movie, you would do Super Secret Crisis Wars, and you find the storyline of the comic books exactly. For you to do some crossovers with this show, and for this new show to go out with a bang.